The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Roger Stone again this evening. And as we start this hour, obviously we have a lot of breaking and developing news. Just want to make sure everyone knows where we are with this whole shutdown thing and the TSA agents. I think rightfully so. I think actually the mainstream news media and the rest of the news media getting it right and emphasizing the fact that no matter what's going on right now between the House and the Senate and the White House, the TSA agents are going to get paid, which presumably means they're going to start coming back to work in larger numbers, and we'll get these lines moving faster at all the airports as opposed to at some of them one day, some of them another. That, to me, is the real breaking story, and there's a little bit of an added caveat to that in that we really believe they're going to get their paychecks as soon as Monday. I don't know why with direct deposit they can't get it on Saturday, but all right. So that's really the biggest piece of news right now, but that is still part of an envelope of a package that includes the fact that the partial shutdown continues. Senate Republicans really caved to the Democrats on some of their demands about ICE. They decided to just vote for it to try to get the DHS funded again in some way whatsoever. Well, the House Republicans just not going for it. And I think that House Speaker Mike Johnson put it really clearly here why they aren't going for it right now. Listen to Speaker Johnson.
This has to stop. The Republicans are not going to be a party to this. They have taken hostage the funding processes of government so that they can impose their radical agenda on the American people when we can't have any part of it. This gambit that was done last night is a joke. I'm quite convinced that it can't be that every Senate Republican read the language of this bill, and I'm going to just read you one excerpt of it because it's pretty alarming, and it says everything that you need to know in Section 4. This is on page 2 of the bill. This is an actual copy of the bill. That excerpt. It says, quote, "The contents printed under the headings of this bill, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Security Operations, under the heading of U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and Protection, shall have no force or effect for purposes of this act, and amounts specified in the final bill under the subheading Border Security Operations and under the heading U.S. Customs and Border Protection and under the headings of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in the Department of Homeland Security shall be zero." We're not doing that. And it is unconscionable to me that the Democrats would force some sort of negotiation at 3 o'clock in the morning and try to hoist this upon the American people and then get on their jets and go home for their holiday and pretend and think that we're going to go along with that.
Yeah, so no deal. And speaking of people getting on their jets and going home for the holiday, that includes Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune caught at the airport. I assume this was Reagan National Airport. Lots of videos circulating, confirmed videos circulating online. Some people trying to ask him some questions. He's just moving along. And Mike Johnson, this is a guy who has really weathered a lot of storms. I know there's a lot of you listening who don't like him, you don't trust him, you don't think he's MAGA enough. Okay, but you've got to give him credit for, first of all, staying in office as long as he's had. Remember, we just had revolving doors with the speakers of the House, and he's been managing to get a number of bills passed with this razor-thin majority that he has. And he's losing his patience here a little bit with his fellow Republicans in the Senate specifically, as you heard. He's not the only one who's angry. Chip Roy, who's another guy that MAGA world doesn't like all that much as far as a Republican. He's a House member from Texas, but he also had some really strong words. The next half hour, you'll hear what he had to say because he really backs up Johnson in a really interesting way. Now, folks, I just want to take a little bit of a timeout just for 1 second here because it's 8:09 Eastern time. We are now wrapping up the 4th week of a major U.S. war military action against Iran. And isn't it remarkable that a government shutdown and TSA lines at the airport are the top story? I mean, the war isn't even the top story. Now, it's somewhat related to the story because as a lot of people are correctly pointing out, do we really want to have a Department of Homeland Security not fully funded at a time when we're going in a war against the world's #1 terrorism country in Iran? Where they're plotting stuff here on our homeland. You know that. But still, we're talking about such a malpractice by Congress right now. And again, it's the Democrats. They have voted for and initiated this shutdown. That is an objective fact. You might support that. You might say, hey, I hate ICE so much. I believe in all the delusionary lies about ICE. And I'm willing to burn the country down over it, which has been the MO of the Trump haters from the beginning. You want to hate Donald Trump? You have every right to do so. But it's just amazing how much they've gone from flipping the chessboard when they don't like Donald Trump to trying to burn down the whole game room. This is another example of that. But I do want to get you updated on a couple of things that are going on with the Iran war right now. First of all, a U.S. base in Saudi Arabia, which is also shared with the Saudis, has been attacked. We're getting reports that there are U.S. troops who are injured there. No reports of any troops killed. 4 weeks into the war now, we have 14 dead U.S. troops. One is too many. And I'm going to talk about, though, the context of that kind of a number right there when we look at overall wars in history. And I'll talk about that in the next half hour. But I think one of the biggest headlines today in the war on Iran is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that this is going to be a matter of weeks, not months, before this war ends. Now, does that mean that we're going to accept some kind of partial victory? Does that mean that there's something big in the works? No way to know that. And people who are speculating about that should probably not do that. But definitely that was should have been an encouraging word, I think, from Marco Rubio for those people who are legitimately worried, not those who were trying to drum up fears without any facts behind them. But for those of you who are legitimately worried that this war is going to go on for months and months and months, you have to be encouraged by what Marco Rubio had to say. Now, Rubio was also confronted on the tarmac today and asked about that trigger word that's being used against the United States now, just like it's been used against Israel falsely in both cases, the word genocide. Here's what Marco Rubio had to say about that. Listen to this.
The Iranian foreign minister, what he said at the UN human rights, accusing the U.S. and Israel of genocide, essentially.
The Iranian, okay. Well, he's an expert in genocide. They're experts in that because, they sponsor terrorism all over the world, and they've killed thousands and thousands of people. Look at the Middle East. Look at the Middle East, guys. Every problem in the Middle East tracks back to Iran. Hezbollah, Iran. Shia militias that are destroying and threatening Iraq, Iran. Hamas, Iran. The Houthis, Iran. Assad when he was in Syria, Iran. Everywhere you turn, they're behind all of it. They are a destabilizing, dangerous, evil force that had to be dealt with. They have to be weakened.
When you're dealing with political debates in America today, probably all over the world, this isn't just an American thing. I always struggle with this. Am I dealing with someone who's an idiot? Really not educated, doesn't know what the meaning of words are, like genocide? Genocide means the deliberate erasure of a people. The United States not doing any of that. Israel's not doing any of that. The Islamist terrorists are trying to do that. They've been unsuccessful. Well, with the exception of killing their own people. Islamist terrorists kill more Muslims than Christians and Jews combined every single day of the week. But if you do it to yourself, is it genocide? I guess so. Self-genocide. But when you're fighting against terrorists and targeting military targets and terrorist targets, that's not genocide. That's not a partisan statement. That's just a dictionary definition of what genocide is and what it isn't. I have to tell you, I never know, or hardly ever know when I'm talking to someone about that, whether they're just deliberately lying, knowing what genocide means, and twisting it and trying to use it as a trigger word. You know why they use that word? Because the real victims of the worst genocide in human history, the Holocaust, still feel tremendously wounded about it, and their children feel tremendously wounded by it, and their grandchildren feel tremendously wounded by it. And it's a way to rub salt in a Holocaust wound. That's why they use it. They love to accuse the victims of the crime for which they are a victim of. That's an added torture. That's why they do it. But there also are some legitimate people who don't know what genocide is. So I always wonder about that, and Rubio wasn't having it. Rubio could have further explained that the real genocide, people who are trying to commit genocide, are the Islamist terrorists who make it very clear they want to kill all the Jews and don't want to live with any Jews. That's genocidal talk. You've never heard any legitimate leader of Israel or their military say, let's get rid of all the Muslims. They just don't. That's not the policy, the official policy of Israel. It's not the official policy of the United States. I shouldn't have to explain all of this. But that's the way things are going right now. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about Ilhan Omar because Vice President Vance is talking about her. And another congresswoman, a Democrat congresswoman from another state, and they're both doing something in common. They're playing the race card. They're playing the Islamophobia card. We'll be right back on the Stone Zone. I'm Jake Novak, filling in for Roger.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak, filling in once again for Roger Stone. Thank you so much for joining us on all the stations and podcasts and all the different outlets you can use to listen to this program all over the world, not just in the United States. At about 50 minutes after the hour, 50 minutes after the hour, I'm going to talk a little bit about Jim Farley. He's the CEO of Ford. Not really going to bash him necessarily, but wait until you hear two things. Wait until you hear how much he was paid for 2025, and wait till you hear why he was paid so much. Some folks really know how to stack the deck. Let's put it that way. Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from the Minneapolis area in Minnesota. We all know who she is. Somali immigrant, intense critic of President Trump, big supporter of Hamas, big supporter of terrorist groups all over the world, potentially on the payroll of Qatar and other groups that act as clearinghouses for Iran, et cetera, et cetera. And as we learn more and more, potentially a major linchpin figure in all the fraud that's been uncovered in Minnesota this calendar year. Remember when that was a big story a whole 7-8 weeks ago? It feels like a million years ago, doesn't it? Well, Vice President J.D. Vance is talking about one of the biggest controversies about Ilhan Omar, which I have to admit, when I first heard this controversy, I want to say it was like 7 years ago, I thought it might be a trumped up thing, a phony thing. But, her responses to it over the years have only made it clearer that it's probably very well based in fact. Well, here's what J.D. Vance had to say about it just today. Listen to this.
Talk about Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz. And obviously, Ilhan Omar, the president and the White House have been out saying that she married her brother, that there is immigration fraud going on here. These are deportable denaturalization offenses. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we actually think that Ilhan Omar definitely committed immigration fraud against the United States of America. And I talked to Steve Miller about this actually recently. We're trying to look at what the remedies are. That's the thing that we're trying to figure out is what are the legal remedies now that we know that she's committed immigration fraud? How do you go after her? How do you investigate her? How do you actually do the thing? How do you build the case necessary to get some justice for the American people? There's a related issue, Benny, which is she has been at the center of a lot of the worst fraudsters in the Somalian community. So do I know that Ilhan Omar was aware that the Quality Leering Center was defrauding the American people? I'm not certain of it, but we at least need to investigate it, because if people can commit wrongdoing without even the fear that they're going to be found out, that's a fundamental problem. So I'm worried about the immigration fraud. I'm also worried about what did Ilhan Omar know about what was happening in the Somali community, and why was nobody looking into it until, frankly, Donald Trump came along.
So there you hear the vice president connecting these two things. The allegation against Ilhan Omar that she married her own brother. And by the way, no one is saying she actually married her own brother, like lived with him and had a ceremony. They're saying that she married him in a civil document kind of way and put him down as her husband so that she could get him into the country and that she could get into the country. And I've seen the documents. Now, they could be incorrect. Who knows? But I can tell you that every time Ilhan Omar has been asked about this specifically, she never denies it. She just says, I'm not going to respond. And then she claims Islamophobia and gets all upset. I don't know. If anyone ever accused me of marrying my sister, I would say, that's ridiculous. I never married my sister, not civilly or religiously. Don't worry about it. And then I might push back and say some other things. But I'd have no problem saying that. And I notice that she's never said that. That's a problem. She either has a bad lawyer or she doesn't know how to lie as well as she thinks she does. So that's a story that's percolating right now. Don't know where that's going to go. There's going to be a huge hue and cry if she is charged with immigration fraud. But if the documents prove it, it's just going to take a bunch of judges who throw out the prosecution until it gets to the Supreme Court. And we're going to waste our time with this nonsense. I don't think it's a waste of time to go after Ilhan Omar for a bunch of the things that she's doing. I'm just saying that the legal system is going to make us waste our time and not allow us to punish someone who probably did commit immigration fraud. And it's gross. I know she didn't really marry and have, consummate her marriage with her brother. I'm not accusing her of that. I hope not. She didn't do that. But it's still gross. My goodness. Anyway, she's not alone. Now we also have Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick. She is a Florida Democrat who, in a very unusual thing these days, she just got found guilty of 25 ethics violations. What was unusual about it is that they went through a whole hearing. Here she is denying all the charges, even though she was found guilty.
Well, it's an unjust indictment, and it seems like these intimidation tactics have been pervasive. We spent all week seeing different members getting censured, all in hopes of intimidating and kind of distracting from the Epstein files. And I look forward to my day in court so I can prove myself and actually state the truth. But if this is what Congress is becoming, where they're always trying to intimidate you, scare tactics, especially attacking minorities, black and brown people, then we're going to have to keep fighting for the district. And everybody has been giving me so much support, and we're going to keep fighting until the district gets what it needs, which is fair prices, housing, and fair representation in Congress.
Listen, there were 25 violations, but to make it clear, the big one is that she is found guilty, according to the House Ethics Committee, of stealing COVID funds to buy herself expensive jewelry. There were other things, too. So that's what that was all about. And boy, did she throw the kitchen sink in, everything but the kitchen sink in her answer. Black and brown people, the Epstein files. I mean, I'm surprised she didn't say the X files, the truthers out there. I mean, she just threw everything out there other than to specifically deny the charges. She didn't say anything. She didn't say, oh, I didn't buy that jewelry. Again, that's what I would say if I were innocent. All right, I'm going to get back on the Stones in here. We're going to get you updated on the top stories because a lot of stuff's moving on. And I'm going to let you listen to another governor out there, or find out about another governor, Abigail Spanberger. What's she up to?
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Roger Stone this evening. And we have a little bit of breaking, I would call it breaking/developing news. All the D.C. area airports, BWI, Dulles, and Reagan National, in a ground stop, may just be getting lifted now. There was some kind of an issue with air traffic control, operational issue. This they need like, there's only a Yiddish word for this. This they need like a Lochenkup, which means like a bump on the head. Honestly, this is not what they needed right now. Hopefully that situation is being cleared up. But the good news is we know for sure now that at Monday, as early as Monday, TSA agents are going to start getting those paychecks again, including the back pay that they're due. After all this Democrat voted for and instigated partial shutdown funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to have all the lines at all the airports disappear on Monday, but it should start getting better with the TSA agents, more of them coming back on the job. Maybe even some of them who quit will come back. Doesn't really matter that they quit when they weren't coming in and getting paid. They should be. Hopefully they'll get some grace there. We'll see what happens. That's what's going on at the airports right now. And it just is amazing to me, isn't it, that this is the number one story in America at a time when we are fully engaged in a big war with Iran. Quite impressive. It's actually quite embarrassing. It should be embarrassing that congressional screw-ups, Democrat screw-ups with our funding have become so bad that it outranks the war as the number one story. I mean, it really is the top story right now, this whole shutdown and the TSA agents and what's going on at our airports just for now. Here's Congressman Chip Roy, is a Republican from Texas, explaining why the House was not going to accept this other way around the shutdown that Senate Republicans gave into late last night. House Republicans showing a lot more backbone. One of them was Chip Roy. Listen to him.
Hey everybody, it's Chip Roy here from Texas 21. And what the Senate just sent over to the House is so laughably bad, we're rejecting it out of hand. They sent over a bill that's not going to fund ICE and Border Patrol and stand with the great men and women who are defending our country. We reject that. We're going to stand alongside our law enforcement personnel. We're going to have a full-throated debate. We're deciding what we're going to do. But suffice it to say, we need to stand with those who are standing up for us to defend our country. We need to fully fund them. We need to consider voter ID and other things to make our country safer and better. But we're not going to move this Senate bill. We're going to move something better and send it back to the Senate. We have to.
Yeah, that's Chip Roy, and he does a good job of explaining. In the last half hour, you heard Speaker Mike Johnson doing a good job of explaining. The Senate Republicans gave up just too much. And one of the people really taking it on the chin and maybe even right smack in the nose over this is Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who is all over the internet right now, confirmed videos of him leaving town, leaving D.C. before that ground stop, and getting out of town before the Save America bill is passed, before they've really resolved this DHS shutdown of the Democrats. And yes, it is the Democrats' ultimate responsibility. They started this and they kept voting to keep this shutdown going, this partial shutdown going. But for Thune to leave is a very bad look. He must have had a really, really good... I mean, honestly, short of my daughter's weddings or the birth of a grandchild, I wouldn't be leaving town. I don't know if he has daughters or grandchildren, probably does. John, you made a mistake here. And your handlers, your political consultants, fire them because they shouldn't have let you do that. It's as simple as that. Now, still a huge story, even though it's the number 2 story, which is hard to believe, is the Iran war. We're getting reports that a U.S.-Saudi base in, of course, Saudi Arabia, hit by Iran this evening. We have reports of American injuries, no deaths. So we're still at 14 deaths, and 1 is too many. Anybody who's listening to me now who thinks I'm making light of the amount of deaths in this war, you really, just shove it. That's just not what's going on here, and you know it. But I want everyone to get back to reality here in America, because I keep hearing people telling me, oh, this is a quagmire. You don't know what quagmire means. I've heard some people saying this is our Vietnam. After 4 weeks, I just wanted to give you some mathematical context because, you know, the party of science. Math is a science, by the way. Did you know that? Anyway, here's a little bit of math for you. Now, before the Afghan war, which we technically fought for 20 years in this country, the Vietnam War was the longest war in this country. We started military action, small amount, in 1959. Went all the way through 1972-73. Longest war we had. I'm just going to say, for argument's sake, and to round things out, that we were there for 13 years. 13 years is 676 weeks, to be exact. We lost 59,000, more than that, but I'm going to round it, 59,000 U.S. servicemen and women in the Vietnam War. That's an average of 87 dead for each one of those 676 weeks. We've been fighting Iran, a country that has more people than Vietnam, a country that has been preparing for war and war alone for 47 years, longer than Vietnam was, and with better weapons than Vietnam had. We've been fighting them for 4 weeks, and we have 14 dead. 1 is too many. I will never make light of even 1 death or serious injury. Of course I won't. But to compare it to Vietnam, to compare it to a quagmire, it's just like that conversation we had just a few minutes ago about genocide. Am I talking to someone who is so uneducated that they don't know what quagmire means, or they don't know what the Vietnam War was? Or am I talking to someone who does know those things and they're just being intellectually dishonest? You never know in America today, especially when you're online and you're not really speaking with the person face to face. You never know. Now, one of those people that I don't ever seem to know what she's talking about, whether she's being honest or not. I understand what she's talking about, but whether she's just being obtuse, for you Shawshank Redemption fans, I can't believe you're being so obtuse, Warden. Remember what happened to Andy Dufresne after he said that. I don't know if Governor Abigail Spanberger of Virginia is just being obtuse, or since she's a former CIA agent or analyst, she's probably not being obtuse. She's probably just being mighty dishonest. Now, there was a woman in Virginia, Stephanie Minter, who was killed at a bus stop by an illegal alien just recently. And there was a reporter who finally got a chance to ask Governor Spanberger about that and whether she's still anti-ICE and still has nothing to say about this. Here's that exchange just today.
Hey, Governor. Welcome to Culpeper. Governor, what is your message to Stephanie Minter's family? What is your message to Stephanie Minter's family and children who have been harmed by illegal immigrants, Governor?
My question would be why, when there was a tentative deportation order, ICE did not deport them?
ICE had him in custody for 700 days, Governor.
All right, thank you, sir.
And an immigration judge would not allow him to be deported to Sierra Leone.
Now, was Governor Spanberger just being obtuse, Warden? Or was she deliberately lying, knowing darn well that a judge didn't allow for the deportation? This is incredible. You have law enforcement officers in this country doing their job, risking their lives to apprehend people, put them in detention, try to deport them, only to have judges not only block it, but then have the politicians who support that blockage pretend that it's ICE's fault for not doing the deportation. I mean, gaslighting isn't a good enough word for this. And I hate that word, by the way. It's overused. I'm sorry I even used it. I'm going to fine myself $1. The level of dishonesty here is beyond measure. Beyond measure. What's going on in Virginia right now has been documented by so many people is just the absolute robbery of due process in that state, the absolute just one horrific thing after the other. And I hope that all the Republicans there, or all the people in Virginia who voted for Donald Trump but didn't vote for Winsome Earl Sears, are happy with this result. I don't know what was wrong with Winsome Earl Sears that you didn't give her vote. I hope it wasn't because she was a black woman, and as Republicans, you won't vote for a black woman. I haven't found that to be the case. I heard that they were Trump supporters who didn't think she supported Trump enough. I don't know what the reason was, but there's no reason why you chose the Spanberger over her. And now you're really paying for it. You're paying for it with a redistricting battle. You're paying for it with the loss of your Second Amendment rights in many of them in Virginia, tax raises. You're also paying for it with a complete backtracking and just abrogation of a promise that Spanberger made to make affordability. Remember, her election issue was affordability. Everything she's done has made it more expensive in Virginia, including holding up a natural gas plant that would lower the cost of energy in that state. Her top energy guy, chief energy officer, blocking the opening of a natural gas plant. You know, this is so funny. You know how the crazy environmentalists say, we have to cut emissions by 50%. We have to cut emissions by this percent, that percent. I can do that for you at the snap of my fingers. Just go to natural gas. If you replace coal fire plants with natural gas, you cut 50% emissions. If you replace oil-based plants with natural gas, you cut emissions by something like 20, 30%. Big emissions cut. But it's still a fossil fuel, and it's still those white Republican men, oil companies, and we don't like that. We'd rather destroy the world. This is nihilism. Listen, I want to have a cleaner environment, although I'd like for us to go back to 1970s like pollution reduction, where we're literally picking up litter, stopping dumping in our oceans. To me, that's a much bigger environmental threat than emissions, than CO2, any day of the week. Because that's something that we humans can actually make a difference. You know, the most honest scientists will tell you, we don't really know if we can make any difference in the changing of our temperature. We've been trying to do that since the pagan times, and we would sacrifice babies in the hopes that we would get a rainy day. Or not a rainy day. I think that we're just as futile when it comes to that. But what isn't futile is cleaning up our oceans, cleaning up our parklands. That was something that I was brought up with. And it seems like no one's talking about that anymore. And believe me, you walk around some of the public lands in this country right now, we could use some cleaning up. Remember the whole medical waste that was washing up on our shores in the mid to late 80s? Whatever happened to concerns about that? Did they solve that problem? I don't think they completely solved it. I hope so. But anyway, this is nihilism. This is basically, they don't want anything. They really want us to go back in caves. They want to severely reduce the number of people on this earth, which has never really truly been proven to be the actual source of a problem. Have you ever noticed that the countries that are suffering from, quote, overpopulation problems are also the countries with the most corrupt leaders and dictators and horrible human beings? Maybe that has something to do with it. Anyway, it's nihilism. They don't want anything to be done. They don't want any kind of progress. I do have some good news for you, though, going a little bit further south from Virginia to Georgia. Now, today was a big day in this whole effort to try to prove if not, there was any major election fraud in the 2020 election in Georgia. You'll recall that the FBI seized tens of thousands of ballots from Fulton County, that really, really fishy vote count there. Remember, they had a pipe burst. They had all those ballots that they didn't verify, et cetera, et cetera. And the FBI was able to seize tens of thousands of those questionable ballots. Fulton County went to court today, went to a federal judge today to argue to get those ballots back. They claimed that they were hoodwinked by the FBI to hand over those ballots, and they really didn't know why they had to hand them over. Well, again, there hasn't been a decision yet, but the federal judge, in this case, Judge J.P. Booley, heard arguments. And based on the questions that the judge asked, it seems like the FBI is going to be able to keep those ballots. So I want to make sure everyone is updated about that, because that could really make a difference in all of this right now. That's an interesting story. Now, going even further south, Well, not further south, going a little bit west of Georgia. I want to get you updated on another story, which is a good example of good and bad journalism in America. Basically, bad journalism. As some of you may know, Elon Musk has one company. It's called The Boring Company. It's kind of a funny name, The Boring Company with one R, because they literally dig tunnels. And they have been working in the city of Nashville to create underground tunnels that get people from downtown to the airport really, really fast. Sounds great to me. A direct line to the airport, no traffic. I can make sure I get my flight. Sounds great. CNBC, my former station, came out with a big story on their website today about how people in Nashville now don't like that project. And then when you read in the second paragraph, they said, well, actually, what happened was when we asked in the poll, we said Elon Musk's project, people didn't like it. When they took his name out of the question, they did like it. Well, now, what's the point of doing a story like that? It's a complete. You're admitting in your second paragraph that you loaded the poll, and who knows if people are for it or against it now. Now you've just completely muddied the field. This is journalism? This isn't even good polling. It's bad journalism, and they're reporting on a bad poll. Talk about fruit of a poison tree. Just incredible. All right, I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone here on the Stone Zone. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about Jim Farley. He's a CEO of Ford, and boy, is he a lucky guy. But did he tip the scales in his own favor? Wait till you hear about this.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Spring calls for a wardrobe refresh, and Nordstrom has the best styles of the season. From dresses and denim to standout tops and accessories, find the trends and essentials that feel right for you. Discover new arrivals from brands you love like Wave, Princess Polly, Mango, Adidas, and Free People. Plus, free shipping and returns and free styling appointments make everything so easy. Shop in stores at Nordstrom.com or download the Nordstrom app.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone this evening. Want to get you updated on a couple of developing / breaking stories. Looks like that ground stop that was going on at all three D.C. area airports. I don't know why all three had to have a full ground stop, but it was at Dulles that there was a problem. Apparently some kind of smoky odor in the air traffic control tower. That's been taken care of. We had somebody here at WABC whose family member was flying out of Dulles on their way overseas, and that's all taken care of. That's good news. Again, however, that they needed like a hit on the head. I mean, honestly, with everything that's going on at our airports. So that seems to be resolved. What isn't resolved is whatever the heck's going on with Tiger Woods. At the top of the hour, you heard me talking about that. Tiger Woods had to spend some hours in jail today, DUI, either under the influence of a drug or boot. They don't know exactly what yet. We're not going to find out probably that quickly. Maybe we will. But what a fall from grace from Tiger Woods once again. Of course, probably the biggest fall from grace from the standpoint of a endorsement figure. And if you remember 20 years ago in this country, really as recently as maybe 18 years ago, I can't remember exactly when that first went down with Tiger Woods. I want to say it was 2009, that first car accident. And then we found out about the infidelities and all the other issues with him. This was a man whose endorsement was gold in America, the number one sought after endorsement for just about anything. And he had to come back in many ways. Certainly at his age, not going to be the best golfer in the world anymore. We know that. But now he's got this DUI arrest, hit a vehicle. So not a great situation for Tiger Woods. And we know he's been through a lot. So's everybody. You know, a lot of people have a lot of things weighing on them. We certainly understand that. But obviously there's something going on with him personally. I'm sorry. When you have multiple DUIs and these kinds of problems, I'm sorry. I understand I'm not a psychiatrist. And even if I were, he's not my patient. So I'm not trying to play the psychic psychiatrist or the pretend psychiatrist, but I'm sorry, it doesn't take a psychiatrist to realize there's something going on here. This is a cry for help. This has got some other things going on. That's a lot of people. A lot of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about. And as a human being, I certainly have compassion for him. Not a huge professional golf fan, so no one can accuse me of being some kind of Tiger Woods fan. I really didn't have much of an opinion about him one way or the other, which was hard to be that way in this country all those years ago, because he was everywhere. He was everywhere. He checked a lot of boxes. All those years ago, first of all, he was young. He was in that demo, 18 to 35. He was an incredible athlete. He was of mixed race. had a great smile, all those things that you want. And he was involved in a sport which caters to very wealthy people, mostly. All those things that you want, to sell your watches, to sell your cars, to sell your jewelry, to sell your airline, to sell your resort. I mean, what didn't he plug? Again, of high-end thing, he plugged it all. He lost that with the first controversy, and now any chance of him doing that again, not too good. He may end up doing prescription drug ads. And even then, it won't be so great. I'm not crying for him. I'm sure he's financially set, and his family is as well. But my goodness. I want to spend the last minute and a half or so just talking about another thing that's going on in America right now. And millions of American families know exactly what I'm talking about, probably some of you as well. This is the week, and next week as well, when these final decisions from America's colleges come down for regular admission. And there are about 20 million college students in America right now. So divide it by 4, you're talking about a freshman class. We're talking about millions of American families and millions of American 17, 18-year-olds who are getting a decision in the mail, or most of them, of course, online now, that they have really been on edge about for a long time. And for a lot of them, it's been a great day. It's been a great week. They got the yeses that they wanted. And for a lot, they got a lot of no's. And I just want to first extend the congratulations to those of you who got the answer you wanted, and to those of you who didn't, who put in the work. Please remember, this is not the be-all and end-all. I hope you know that. And I hope you know that it's really, really important to understand that your education is going to be a lot more than the 4 years you spend in college. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope you've had a great education up to now. But just remember, it's just a small bump in the road. I got into a great college, and I am nowhere near as successful as a lot of my friends and family members who I'm very proud of. I'm very happy with all that I've been able to do as well, and it's got very little to do with where I went to school.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?